So, it's really interesting being here today because I came in kind of thinking of some of the things I wanted to talk about, and then they were all talked about. But the actually more important thing for me in that is how smart people are who actually live the experience of the city. And the issue here is not, do we know what to do? Do we know what to be considered? But it's much more is, why are those who have the authority, the power, not listening? Right? Because that's the question. And so, as Tom said, this, all in all, is a political question. And it is not the only political question we face. It's one. And they're all interlinked. And so I want to give you, people talk about, well, what should we be doing the planning around? And a lot of folks have said it and talked about the importance of paying attention to really a comprehensive plan for the city. And yes, we need affordable housing, we need a livable city. And all those things are great, and nobody really knows what it means, right, quantifiably. So I'm going to give you a metric. Here's a metric. The metric is based on something that's true here. 45% of the students who go to the Cambridge Public Schools basically are low income. So how about a city design method for the future that is predicated on the fact that 80% of the people who graduate from high school can live in the city? You build the city on that method, right? Now, there's two things they can do, right? They can say, well, we can't improve the schools, so we have to have more low-income housing, or they can say, well, we can improve the education so they can afford it. They both work, right? They both work in some sense, if that can happen. We know which one it would have to be. It would have to be the latter because they're not going to do the schools. You can't. The idea of broadening, I think my work is a lot around civic participation. How do you get people involved? So I have a couple of comments or critiques. One is, if you're going to build something that's citywide, you've got to figure out how to get more voices in. And you can't get more voices in by talking. A lot of people won't respond to what you say. They respond to what you can give them in their hands to work with, to try to understand things. For most people, when you go and talk to them about the building of a city and what it looks like and the forms and the shadows and stuff like that, it's like, it goes right over here. Nobody knows what you're talking about. But there are a lot of people who really have experimented and created some great methods. A guy who's right out of here, James Rojas, who's built this incredible participatory planning process using found objects that really allow people to construct three-dimensionally the city that is actually being proposed to see if they really like it. So you have to figure out how to create different methods to engage folks, because I can guarantee you most people are not going to be hearing what you're saying and understanding what does it actually mean in terms of what's going to be in front of them 5 years from now and 10 years from now, right? So if you say it's a certain percentage of affordable housing, somebody else says it's a certain percentage of affordable housing, people will listen to the largest number, right? That's what they'll listen to, right? If you can start to show them the difference that it makes, it's going to make a big difference. Somebody said about, I also want to say something about being careful about what you state. So I think you said you want to make Cambridge a livable city, right? And keep Cambridge a livable city. So my notion, how about first let's make it a livable city, and then we worry about keeping it a livable city. And I think that was actually Renee's point, right, about what's happening. Right? What's happening to people who live on the margins of the city, how you can't even do the things that you should be able to do normally in the city. You've got to leave the city to make it happen. So part of this is not about how do we keep the status quo, but how do we develop in a way that actually does take care of the people who live here right now. So I talk about this notion about we really need to do much more inclusive planning. And so, I teach at MIT. I'm not on the real estate. I do not work for the real estate corporation at all. I teach in the Department of Administration and Planning. I've always been pushing inside of our department and I've talked to folks about it here, and I've talked to students about it. Given the value of what that department is, I'm dumbstruck as to why this group and that planning department aren't working together. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's values alignment. There are people who would want to do it. And in some sense, I think the ask has never happened on both sides. Right?
Well, the ask happened. I'll tell you what.
Okay, you can tell me later. But I think with
They said no.
I think with the new leadership, with the community, with the group coming from the community and saying, we need some assistance with this.
And with someone on the inside.
Right. But you can actually make that happen, and there can be some benefits for that. I'm not saying it's the answer to everything. I'm just saying it's a resource that can be helpful. Yeah. So I'm not going to say much more because we have like 10 minutes. We have 3 speakers, and we have a lot of questions. But I do want to go back to, I think the metric is really important. What the things you're shooting for. And I really want to urge you to say, put something out there that's bold. Tie it to the children. And make sure you're building a city that's going to take care of the children as they are today. And that's how you'll make sure that you have a city that has poor people in it, that has a diversity of people in it, and that actually works.